I may have gone too far in a few places.
This video is unlike anything I've ever done before, and it's been a script in the works on and off for about 3 years now. It's a breakdown of a universe's struggled history with continuity, an examination of a fractured yet beloved IP, and a letter from a lifelong fan in myself who hopes for a brighter future for a brand he cares about. Because the canonicity of Star Wars is complicated. Even before Disney bought the franchise and decanonized everything but the movies and cartoons, the canonicity of it all was already pretty questionable, but it was all canon. Kind of. Not really, but sort of. Let me start by explaining where we're at now. Currently, there's 2 major existing versions of Star Wars canon, each sprawling out from the same source of the original 6 movies. Those 6 movies are the spine of the franchise. They are unquestionably the true and canon happenings within the universe. From that spine, there are 2 opposing universes that sprawl out. The Disneyverse and the affectionately and originally called Expanded Universe, now referred to more colloquially as Legends. Along with these 2 different universes are 2 fairly different fan bases. The first thing I'll talk about is the Disneyverse, but only briefly for now. I have admittedly spoken somewhat negatively of it a few times on this channel before, and may even continue to do so from time to time when and if it's warranted, but I have made an effort to show more grace to those who have found some kind of solace in that iteration. I get it, you know? But it's still a hard reality to reckon with because, I mean, from a certain point of view, Disney has opted to retell and re-explain every significant event that had previously already been explored in the expanded universe, but did so in arguably far worse ways. A few notable examples are, number 1, the acquisition of the Death Star plans. In Legends, the plans are obtained by a multitude of different events, most notably by Kyle Katarn, an ex-Imperial soldier gone rogue mercenary who infiltrates an Imperial base, steals the plans, and escapes. Although the full plans were split up into multiple pieces and scattered across different locations, making their acquisition more believable and compelling across the different stories that covered it. In the Disneyverse, the plans were obtained via Jyn Erso and her crew in the movie Rogue One, and everything felt way more watered down and oversimplified. In my opinion, anyway. Number 2, Han Solo's origins. In Legends, there's a trilogy of books that shows a very compelling and well-explained origin of what Han was up to before his involvement with the Rebels. Disney's movie, Solo: A Star Wars Story, although I think it's probably the best of the Disney Star Wars films, offers a far more simplified and significantly less interesting origin. Again, in my opinion at least. Number 3, what happened to Luke, Leia, and Han after the movies? In Legends, Luke became a powerful Jedi Master, reformed the New Jedi Order, and made some mistakes, but always continued to learn and come back from them. Fell to the dark side for a short time, but ultimately overcame his struggles. Han and Leia had multiple children, started a family, stayed involved in the New Republic, and continued to grow and learn as they overcame struggles together. Disney made Luke a foolish old curmudgeon who abandoned the Jedi ways, Han a disloyal loser who abandoned his wife and child, and Leia, well, they really didn't do much with Leia, unfortunately, which is arguably worse than ruining her. It's all so much more nihilistic and sad for no other reason than to give their new fanfic tier OCs the spotlight. There's so much more I could go into, but my point is that, fundamentally, the Disney canon feels to me like kind of a spitefully made product, half of which is written solely to undermine the previous canon from a boardroom of angry, spiteful executives who have repeatedly spoken out regarding how, quote, toxic and disgusting, unquote, they think the Star Wars fanbase is. Now hold on a minute if you love the Disney films and other releases, and just bear with me, because I don't hate everything Disney has done with Star Wars, nor do I think less of you for liking it. I just don't like these millionaire producers calling the shots because it feels like they actively dislike the fans, but they love our money. So I think it's fair to be a little frustrated with the situation, right?
Only money.
Anyway, they reformed a beloved universe the way they wanted it. All that being said, I do not believe by any stretch that everything from the Disney canon is awful. As much as I resent the loss of the Legends universe overall, I will readily and happily admit that there are a few solid contributions to the Disney canon that I really do love. There's plenty of it to go around that doesn't seem to have been made in spite or for love of money alone. So, in fairness, on the record, here's a few Disney canon Star Wars things that I love. Number 1, Jedi Fallen Order. This was an absolute labor of love. Cal Kestis is a great addition to the universe, and all of the characters are compelling, well-written, and exciting. The fact that his story is relegated to the Disney canon is both sad for me and good for them. I haven't played Jedi Survivor yet as of writing this, but I've heard the only criticisms of it are from poor optimization on launch, so I'm hoping it's good too overall. But as for Jedi Fallen Order, I loved this one. Number 2, Bleeding Kyber Crystals. Now, I may be in the minority of old school fans on this one, but there's really no way around it. The idea that Sith and Dark Jedi lightsabers are red because they are bled through the dark side is a fantastic idea. Even as a kid, I found it strange that a Jedi would fall and then go looking for a red crystal for no other reason than to let everyone know that they've gone bad. The explanation of bleeding Kyber crystals is one of the coolest Disney canon contributions that they've ever gotten. It's the exact kind of edginess thing that I love, and that matches the dramatic flair of the Sith and Dark Jedi. Number 3, some of the books. A while back, I was listening to some of the audiobook for Star Wars Brotherhood, and I have to admit, it's really good. Released in 2022, the book explores the events Anakin and Obi-Wan encountered directly after Attack of the Clones, including that business on Cato Nemoidia mentioned in Revenge of the Sith.
That business on Cato Nemoidia doesn't count.
It also brings in Ventress and a slew of other interesting things. It's all Disney canon, but genuinely, if a few things were changed, someone could tell me this was from the expanded universe and I'd believe them. Mike Chen, the author, clearly loves the universe, and the audiobook was free on Spotify when I was listening to it, so I highly recommend it. Additionally, the Disney canon book Thrawn is a fantastic read or listen, and the decision to get the original creator of Thrawn to handle his Disney inclusion was a brilliant move on their part. Number 4. I haven't liked a single one of the Star Wars movies under Disney, and I'm not a fan of most of what I've seen of their television contributions either. The only exception is that I liked The Mandalorian Season 1 and most of Season 2. Not Season 3, though.
Chicken jockey!
I haven't seen Andor or Ahsoka, and I may or may not bother with them. I didn't really like the Obi-Wan show, but I did really enjoy the 2.5-hour fan edit that turned it into a movie and improved it in pretty much every way. If the Obi-Wan show had released exactly as the fan edit was as a movie, I'd have loved it.
But it isn't.
And that scene between Obi-Wan and Vader is among the best live-action Star Wars sequences I've ever seen. It's just too bad the official release was so bloated and surrounded by stupid decisions. So I just wanted to give some credit where it's due. Disney canon is here to stay, and it's really not all bad. I'm not exactly hopeful for its future, but there is a chance we see some good come of it all. If the prophecy is true and Filoni is to adapt Heir to the Empire into a movie, bringing back Han, Luke, and Leia as recast actors, then, well, we'll see. It could be bad, or it could be kinda cool. I don't know. Now I want to talk about the expanded universe, or as it's now known, Legends. I recently saw a clip of Dave Filoni talking about the Star Wars EU, and he claimed that as far as he was aware, none of the EU was ever truly canon.
From the filmmaking world that I was brought into, the TV series, the films were it.
Only the movies and shows were ever genuinely canon, with the rest of it all being supplementary what-if content. And what he's saying here is actually true from a certain point of view, but the real truth is that the EU was always canon, in a sort of pseudo-canon kind of way. This is where we get into the seriously convoluted canonicity of Star Wars.
Strap yourselves in.
With Disney, everything in Star Wars is cut and dry. If it's released post-2013 and doesn't say Legends on it, then, with a few minor exceptions, it's canon. But before the infamous buyout, things were a little more complicated. Actually, they were a lot more complicated. See, right before the Disney buyout, there was one main Star Wars universe, but with 5 different tiers of canonicity. These tiers were referred to as G-Canon, T-Canon, C-Canon, S-Canon, and N-Canon, in that exact order. G-Canon, meaning George Canon, being the absolute canonicity and the top of the hierarchy. However, and this is the important part, all elements within the first 4 of the 5 canon tiers were considered by most to have taken place in-universe in some capacity, and were for the most part widely considered completely canon throughout both LucasArts and the fan base. In the earlier days, George did outright disavow any and all Star Wars content that he himself didn't write, but I'll get to that in a minute. With that being said, anytime a piece of Star Wars media contradicted a different piece of Star Wars media is when the tiers were intended to actually come into play. If one piece of media, say a book, contradicted another piece of media, like, say, a comic, then the product in the higher tier was considered to be the true event, with the other relegated to a lower tier. This was the genius setup that allowed for what we Star Wars fans used to refer to as the expanded universe before the dark times. This tier list was designed so that LucasArts could essentially say that anything you see in Star Wars media is in some way canon, unless it directly, or in some specific cases indirectly, contradicts something stated in a higher canon tier. Thus, the tier list hierarchy of canonicity. G-Canon was the absolute canon. It is comprised exclusively of the original 6 films, the animated Clone Wars movie, and any and all notes or statements coming from George Lucas himself, meaning anything that contradicts, expands on, or alters the interpretation or mood of any of the original 6 films is to be immediately disregarded. So if it came from George, then it took precedent. T-Canon, meaning television canon, was just the Clone Wars TV series and was also intended to be applied to any other potential television series after that, such as the cancelled Star Wars Underworld series, which meant that anything contradicting the Clone Wars or other TV shows was to be disregarded canonically, and when the Clone Wars series contradicted the G-Canon, then that specific element of the show was to be disregarded too. See how the hierarchy is working now? Then we've got C-Canon, which is pretty much everything we've ever known as the expanded universe. C-Canon stands for continuity canon, and it's all of the books, games, comics, and other forms of media. So pretty much the entire expanded universe was within the C-Canon tier unless it happened to fall into S-Canon. So when Heir to the Empire released in 1991 with dates and details about the Clone Wars that the prequel trilogy would later directly contradict and retcon, then obviously anything stated in that novel was to be considered retconned or non-canon, while the rest of the novel could still reasonably be taken as real events that occurred following the events of Return of the Jedi. So that's how that worked, but what about when two stories both in the C-Canon tier clashed? Well, when elements of two C-Canon products ended up contradicting each other, which of course they would unavoidably end up doing, then the contradiction would sometimes be taken to a lore master, namely Leland Chi, who handled the vast majority of the universe's continuity, for clarification. Below that, we've got the aforementioned S-Canon, meaning secondary canon, which was basically anything that was obviously too exotic to be taken seriously or contradicted all of the higher canons in some way, but with elements that could still kind of be imagined to have possibly happened. Things like interpretations of events or of the universe, like the Revenge of the Sith video game, Marvel comics from the 70s, or the Star Wars Galaxy's massively multiplayer online game. And lastly, we have N-Canon, which are the products considered totally non-canon within the Star Wars universe in any way. There aren't a ton of things in this realm, but there are some old comics or even the first Rebel Assault game that would be in this category because they just tell stories that completely contradict the main canon by existing and can't reasonably be worked into the continuity. Although a lot of fans just put the totally non-canon things into the secondary canon tier, leaving this one to be a bit redundant and unused, so I guess it's up to the consumer at that point. It's also important to note that this tier system wasn't always there, and in fact was sort of being developed over the course of around 20-ish years as these ideas of canonicity were refined and more firmly solidified. Honestly, by the time this final tier list idea was unveiled, it only existed in this form for a short time before it was made inconsequential thanks to the buyout. Although it is still a great tool to refer to when consuming Legends content, even today, given how big that universe still is, even now in its completed, or at least concluded form. Since then, however, all canonicity has been split into the two distinct categories I talked about earlier, the Disney canon and the Legends canon, with the Legends canon essentially becoming a series of interconnected what-if scenarios within its own universe. So as far as Disney is concerned, if it's not their canon, well, then it's the Legends continuity.
If an item does not appear in our records, it does not exist.
Although I can appreciate how much cleaner and easier this makes things to interact with, I can't overlook that some of the best Star Wars content is now totally non-canon to what is the continuing universe. Granted, it has been pointed out to me that some of the worst Star Wars content actually comes from the EU as well, and I won't argue that either. The fact remains, however, that some of Star Wars' highest highs and lowest lows were spawned from the expanded universe. I really think Disney should have handled their decanonization efforts very very differently. I do know some people who believe that the sequel trilogy is a superior alternative to the original expanded universe, novels, comics, and games, but most of them think that because they actually never read the novels or comics, and the Disney movies were all they experienced. At best, some of them listened to a YouTuber like me break down the happenings of the books, but still did not ever read them. Which is totally fine, by the way. I'm not saying you're obligated to read through dozens of old Star Wars novels, because, I mean, there's a lot of them. But I would encourage at least keeping an open mind about their quality before condemning them if you haven't actually read them for yourself. I'm sure there are people out there who, even despite having read the EU novels like the Thrawn or Bane trilogies, still prefer a Disney sequel trilogy though, and, you know, so be it. That's fine too. If you like it, you like it. But I'm just saying that the way I would have preferred Disney handle it is by cherry picking like half of the existing EU to immediately declare canon and then decanonize the worst and most extreme of it. For instance, the Dark Forces series should have been made canon and adapted into a television series post-haste. The Thrawn trilogy should have remained canon, obviously, and the KOTOR series should have also been made subsequently and unquestionably canon. Things I would be open to a serious discussion of decanonization on are the Yuuzhan Vong series, even though I love it, and the New Jedi Order series. I am aware of the issues that would cause with some of the other books though, and trust me, there are ways around it. I also understand they thought it was cleaner to just cut everything non-movie or TV related all at once, but in my opinion, doing that actually just made everything way messier. I was in Books A Million a while back and saw a fresh, repackaged box set of the Thrawn trilogy re-released, resting on the front table when you first walk in the door, branded with Legends and marked as a bestseller. Its packaging was beautiful, and it implies to me that people are still buying that just as much, if not more, than the newer canon books. There's a reason for that too, because they're really good, and Disney knows it.
You would not be the first.
I mean, you see how hard they're trying to work Thrawn into the Disney Plus shows, and we're seeing a shadow of his former self on screen. I'll be honest, I'm actually rooting for Filoni to bring Zahn in and figure his character out for the shows, because he could still be a serious highlight for the Disney Plus catalog if they can just make him as good as he was in the books. That is, if they're not consulting with him already, which they really should be. As for his original iteration and the old stories involving him, the two cannot be merged together in any sense now. Both timelines are directly in opposition to each other in a million ways. It's like they dug their own grave into a ground of worse stories, and now they're trying to cash in on the old stuff while they struggle to figure a way out of what they did. Sure, the sequel trilogy was an unquestionable financial success.
Mostly.
I mean, I'm no fool. I've seen the numbers. Those movies made mega bank, but they also irreparably damaged both their brand and the fans' trust in the universe. They have made a ton of new fans of their new iteration of the universe, but at the cost of half or more of the old fans. They could have made the same billions of guaranteed dollars, but with a much longer lasting success if they'd just not been so quick to toss it all out and had just adapted versions of the pre-existing stories that had already been written. I mean, they did have some of the richest source material we've ever seen to work from, after all. The Young Jedi Knight series was not only ripe for a proper Disney Plus series, but would have been the optimal time for Mark Hamill to come back as a recurring Jedi Master character to teach the young students. Although I guess Disney Plus wasn't even an idea when the buyout happened, and getting a movie made was their #1 concern, but still, I'm just saying that they're sitting on a gold mine of source material that they've now locked themselves out of using for the most part on principle. Arguably the biggest retcon of Disney's timeline is the literal Force itself. Both timelines had all kinds of details and lore, but a key difference is one's ability to sense the Force. Force sensitivity mattered in the EU. Not everyone could be a Jedi. Not everyone could sense the Force. And then that aspect was amplified when George introduced a genetic component to it, that component being the midichlorians. Oh boy, did people hate that little note. The modern day feel-good narrative is that anyone can be anything they want. You can be as strong, as capable, as good at anything as you want. Want to be a Jedi? Just listen to some podcasts and meditate a little and you'll be tanking lightsaber stabs in no time. And there is a pretty massive degree of truth to that, but it also removes a lot of the specialness from the idea of the Jedi as well. The idea that some people were simply born with more genetic sensitivity than others just made sense to me. I mean, of course Luke and Leia would have a genetic sensitivity to the Force because they were the genetic offspring of Anakin Skywalker, who was also genetically very Force sensitive due to his high midichlorian count. This gets into the wills as well. Let me show you the ancient order of the wills as George Lucas himself described it. Quote, "Back in the day, I used to say ultimately what this means is we were just cars, vehicles for the wills to travel around in. We're vessels for them, and the conduit is the midichlorians. The midichlorians are the ones who communicate with the wills. The wills, in a general sense, they are the Force." End quote. So Anakin's massive midichlorian count mattered because it meant that the wills had determined that they wanted to communicate with him specifically more than someone who was born with a small or even little to no midichlorian count. If Qui-Gon checked your blood and found a midichlorian count of 5, what then? Can you just train real hard until you're lifting X-Wings or pulling Star Destroyers from the sky? I'm actually really not sure, and I don't think this was ever super consistent, even within the expanded universe itself, but the idea of Force sensitivity was still very much a real and important thing within that universe. All of this changed with the Disney canon. In fact, a huge driving factor in the Ahsoka series is that one of the characters that was sort of shown to not be Force sensitive in prior iterations
You have no power.
is now realizing she can just train herself to be Force sensitive by trying real hard. Because it turns out, anyone can do it. Everyone has Force sensitivity now. I mean, everyone could feel the Force already, that was confirmed by George himself, but why does it matter that Anakin has the highest midichlorian count ever then? I guess some are just more prone to it early on, and so that's what the Council searched for in its young recruits? But if anyone can do it, then why do midichlorian counts matter? Can you just manifest extra midichlorians in your bloodstream to communicate better with the wills? Can I justify caring this much about midichlorians when there's still so much untouched grass outside in the real world?
You want the impossible.
The wills are the Force. They are the microbiotic sentience that flows through everyone and everything. Near the end of his reign over the IP, Lucas had intended to show them more prominently in his own idea for a sequel trilogy had he not sold it to Disney. And whether or not that would have been a good idea, I don't know. It could have been terrible if we're being honest, who knows? But so far as I'm aware, Disney canon still acknowledges the reality of the wills, and it has to acknowledge midichlorians because they're in the Phantom Menace. Lucas has always intended that the Force flows through all living things, and so theoretically any person can learn to feel and even use it, but someone with a low midichlorian count learning to do a Force push this massive with little to no training on their second employment of the Force? Why did Luke, who was the son of the Chosen One, presumably also with a high midichlorian count, have to train so hard with a Grand Jedi Master, by the way, to figure out he can lift a single rock? But Broom Kid figured out telekinesis with no training at all, and Rey was doing Jedi mind tricks and lifting boulders also with no knowledge of the Force and very little training. Was it just high midichlorian counts, like how Anakin could sense things before they happened in the Phantom Menace, also with no Jedi training? If all of this seems rather convoluted to you, well, that's because it is. Let's back off the midichlorian stuff. It's all just interpretations of the Force with little more than a few quotes to go off of anyway. I mean, it's a fictional universe. Whoever is writing for it can pretty much do whatever they want. This is how it's been in Marvel Comics and DC Comics, and even going as far back as ancient Greek mythology, where we were seeing Roman poets write up different fictional interpretations of the original Greek gods. Interpretations on fictional universes aren't new, but they certainly can make it confusing to keep up with continuity or canonicity. What I care about right now is more of what it means to be a Star Wars fan among all of this available material. No EU or Legends or Disney asterisk, just a Star Wars fan. What does that look like? Does it mean just liking the movies, or just the original trilogy, or maybe just the original 6 plus whatever else George himself designed? Do you cherry pick from all of the different continuities, so you like some of the Disney movies and a few of the EU novels and maybe 1 or 2 of the different games, but just ignore what you don't like? I guess it wouldn't be the worst thing. Like I said, that's what comic fans have been doing for decades with different Marvel and DC writers and interpretations over the years. Maybe it's good that we have 2 canons to play with now, but the biggest question is, should we?
I'm not sure.
Was the Great Continuity Purge justified, or perhaps even a blessing in disguise? Would it actually be possible for Disney to hire a writer or two and release new material centered in the Legends universe even now, giving Legends fans a reason to come back, like how comics have Elseworlds and Ultimate Universes. A new series set in the Legends lore could go hard, actually. Just slap the Legends branding on there and we're good to go. There's a lot of unresolved plot points and stories still in the Legends universe that haven't been touched since the buyout, and I would love to see what some resolution would look like on those. But is the expanded universe even worth going back to? A lot of people seem to think George Lucas himself didn't ever even really care for it, and Dave Filoni has made it clear that he didn't really ever consider it canon, or at least that's what he says now. Honestly, I think all of this might come down to Coruscant. You know, the big city planet that we first see in episode 1, but that goes on to play an enormous role in the prequel trilogy. Well, I mean, if you want to be that guy, we do technically see it first in the special edition of episode 6, but it's not really named. Most people were introduced to it by name in episode 1. So what do I mean when I say it comes down to Coruscant? Well, I may be about to blow your mind right now. George Lucas did not come up with the name Coruscant.
What?
That name is not his creation. The planet's name actually came from Timothy Zahn in his book Heir to the Empire, and was based on Lucas's notes for the galactic capital that didn't make it into the original trilogy. All the way back in the 80s, when writing Return of the Jedi, George had envisioned the Imperial capital planet to be called Had Abaddon, and wanted it to be far darker, but was convinced when writing the prequels to utilize Zahn's name instead, which was absolutely the right move, by the way. There's this popular theory that goes around that suggests that George Lucas didn't like the expanded universe. And this actually comes from an interview where he himself admits that he hasn't read any of the books and that he doesn't pay any attention to what the other Star Wars related media is doing. I mean, in the earlier days, he did say on several occasions that he saw the expanded universe as a parallel universe to his own, a different timeline of what-ifs that expands on his movies but don't canonically happen. This was later reinforced by a comedy sketch by the popular Robot Chicken crew over at Adult Swim, where he was depicted yelling angrily at a guy who accidentally suggested that Mara Jade was his creation, to which George screams and demands he gets out of the room.
As the creator of Mara Jade,
Wait! I am not the creator of Mara Jade, and I want you to get out of this office right now.
Ted, I got your voucher.
Out! There.
However, I think there's a lot of people who omit that George's view of the expanded universe softened, and he began to warm up to it more and more as time went on. I think he just wanted to cement the fact that he wasn't really bound by it, and he didn't monitor or pay any attention to it. It was a way of reaffirming that he could do whatever he wanted because he was willing to override the pre-existing canon at any time if he pleased, because to him, it wasn't ever really 100% canon until he validated it. A quote from the main voice of Star Wars continuity, Leland Chee, helps to clear this up when he responded to an interviewer who quoted Lucas about how he didn't see the expanded universe as totally canon. Chee responded with, quote, "GL is certainly not bound by the EU, though he's certainly open to using things created in it. Aayla Secura and the Coruscant name, for example. On the other hand, the quote you provide makes it sound like the EU is separate from George's vision of the Star Wars universe. It is not. The EU must follow certain tenets set by George through films and the other guidelines that he provides outside of the films." End quote. At the start of things, George saw the expanded universe as sort of its own continuity handled by LucasArts. He would not involve himself in pretty much any way with the happenings of the expanded universe. No connection. But near the end, he had grown softer and softer on the expanded universe, and his involvement continued to grow more and more, until, before the buyout, he was having regular meetings to advise on the direction of different video games and whatnot. This is supported by another quote from the Keeper of the Holocron, Leland Chee, who said, quote, "The only relevant official continuities are the current versions of the films alone, and the combined current version of the films along with whatever else we've got in the Holocron. You're never going to know what George's view of the universe is beyond the films at any given time because it is constantly evolving." End quote. In 2008, he had shifted his perspective of the universe from two parallel universes to a more interconnected vision, comparing it to the Christian Holy Trinity, where he was the father of the series, with Howard Rothman, the president of Lucas Licensing, being the son, and the fans acting as the Holy Ghost, all of which came together to form a unified concept and realize the full vision of the universe. 3 visions in one universe. Reports even suggest that when working on his Star Wars Underworld series, he was consistently looking up what had already been done and what existed in the EU so he could be aware of it and allow his new series to blend in with what fans had already grown to love by that time. That's huge. That means he actually wanted it to feel cohesive. Why else would he bother to pay respect to the EU by keeping Coruscant as it was described in the expanded universe, not only in name but also in concept and description, or bring Aayla Secura into the films as he had done? The only thing he changed was how it was pronounced, which I think we can all agree calling it Coruscant doesn't have the same charm. When it came time for Lucas to work on his prequels, he took the time to incorporate a few things from the existing continuity even though he didn't create it. He could have outright ignored it all and just made up his own new city planet and called it Had Abaddon like he had originally intended. But he decided to pay some respect to what others had added to the overall universe, at least to some degree, and to the fans who would come to invest their time into this universe. By the end, everything was coming together smooth as butter.
The original saga was about the father, the children, and the grandchildren. And I mean, that's not a secret to anybody. It's even in the novels and everything. And that the children were in their 20s and everything, so it wasn't Phantom Menace again. But so I'm hoping, and they've taken it in a different direction, and I'm excited to see. Since I didn't use my stories, I have no idea what they're doing.
This, of course, is the opposite of how Disney handled things when it came time to introduce their new movies. So much to the point that we don't really see a single planet from the EU mentioned in the sequel trilogy, much less actually show up. Arguably the most infuriating part of it all is that they could have done so much with it by just throwing around a few recognizable names to make longtime fans of the universe feel welcomed into this new iteration. We could have seen Nar Shaddaa, Kessel, Korriban, any number of pre-established fan-favorite planets. We could have seen a skyhook, or any major gesture to say, hey, you guys have been pouring yourself into this universe, and we're excited to welcome you into somewhere different, but still familiar. But we don't. We don't see any of the dozens of already established planets even for a decent sequence. It's all a bunch of new planets, all of which are totally uninteresting and forgettable. Starkiller Base? That's not an homage, it's just unoriginal. Jakku? It's just Tatooine. And you know what? I'm fine with them being creative and showing us new planets. Creativity is cool. I want some new stuff to see and to give the films a chance to flex their creative muscles. But the ones we see are all really lame.
I hate them!
And it didn't make me feel like we were getting cool original planets, it just made me feel like they were desperate to distance themselves from anything that hadn't been in the original 6 films. Like this is a brand new universe, although the cogs in the Disney machine have been working overtime to recanonize EU elements back into Disney's canon over the years despite this.
I mumbled little pieces of the Sith code, because I knew that if it made it into the episode, then it was canon.
There's not much you could have done to make Rise of Skywalker a better film, but just calling Exegol Droman Kaas instead would have made me immediately more forgiving of it overall. But doing that would have also opened associations with an entire universe that Disney not only had no interest in touching, but was actively building a barrier to distance themselves from at the time. I've heard a lot of different reasons as to why this might have been the case, but I assume it was to act as more of a reassurance to casual fans of the films that they didn't need literally any knowledge of the universe outside of the original films to enjoy these new movies. Like patting the casual audience on the shoulder to say, hey, none of those books or games happened, only the 6 movies you've seen. Come on in, it's all new and those stupid nerds don't know anything extra that you don't. It was a baseline reset for the lowest common denominator to minimize ticket purchase hesitancy. Well, that's my theory at least. But by proxy, it also came across to us lame nerds that we'd been wasting our time over the years, and they didn't care about the universe we'd been spending so many hours upon hours learning about out of sheer love and respect for that lore. So yeah, it was kind of frustrating in that respect. Have you ever heard the phrase, no one hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans? Are you starting to see where that phrase comes from now? Because the title Star Wars actually refers to multiple different franchises that, while similar and while sharing the same source of the original 6 movies, all spanned out into completely different types of universes. So yeah, a lot of Star Wars fans do hate Star Wars. But which one? The people who don't like the expanded universe typically think it's convoluted, confusing, overly self-indulgent, way too over the top, and at times incredibly edgy. All of which are probably true if I'm being honest, but are also the exact reasons people like me love it. Whereas people who don't like the Disney canon tend to find it adolescent, simplistic, insulting, seemingly resentful, and at times condescendingly self-aware.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first.
But I think maybe, maybe we can find some common ground here. I don't know how well this pitch is going to go over, but this is genuinely how I feel, so I'm just going to be real with it. I'm not beyond recognizing that throwing a fit over a media franchise is, well, it's a little silly. There is a point to be made about how silly it is to ask that a series made for kids grow up with us and offer us edgier content like KOTOR 2, The Force Unleashed, or the new Jedi Order series. Not to mention that the EU I love so much is unbelievably convoluted, like I said, and to call it over the top would be such an understatement. Their criticisms do have some accuracy. The whole series is ridiculous, but I loved it for those reasons. That said, the average criticisms of Disney's Star Wars are pretty damn accurate too. Their Disney canon was painfully adolescent and simplistic for a long time. While some of it is a little more serious like Andor and a few of the ideas I saw in The Acolyte, some of the parts from Ahsoka I watched were laughably silly, and the Book of Boba Fett took a lethal mercenary and turned him into a total goofball.
Like a panther. Yes?
Look, if you can't make a series about a lethal bounty hunter being a lethal bounty hunter because it's too grim, then just don't make the show at all. And does anyone here contest the insane desperation for merchandising sales? I don't think anyone is falling for this Mandalorian and Grogu movie. I mean, we all know they're pining for those Baby Yoda sales to come back, right? Is anyone falling for this? Not to mention that the writing of the sequel trilogy is so bad even the actors themselves want nothing to do with it and are actively embarrassed by having been a part of it. J.J. Abrams, director of the 7th and 9th films, himself even apologized for the complete lack of planning on anybody's part for how that trilogy was going to go. Disney's buyout did accomplish one very, very good thing for the Star Wars canon though, and that's a kind of solidification in timelines. Since the split, Legends is now kind of like its own multiverse, where all of my favorite Star Wars stories happened, and Disney Canon, which honestly I'll just be calling D-Canon from now on, has a lot of Star Wars stories which I don't really care for, but some that I still really do like. And nothing from those two universes has to cross-contaminate each other now because the split is so concrete that Disney can borrow from Legends, but it can't contaminate it. And vice versa, the sillier stories from Legends don't have to contaminate Disney's canon, like Green Force Lightning, or a clone of Luke called Luke, or a clone of Palpatine. So there's some serious silver lining there for the future. Oh, wait a minute.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Cloning. Secrets only the Sith knew.
I think another great thing about all of this is that the two Clone Wars multimedia projects are now definitive and have somewhere to go. The first Clone Wars multimedia project featured an array of super cool novels like Shatterpoint, Dark Rendezvous, and the Boba Fett young adult novels, along with games like Bounty Hunter, The Clone Wars, and Republic Commando, all of which are awesome, not to mention the shorter animated Clone Wars series, which I vastly prefer to the second series, which would go on to kind of replace it later. I used to lament that the 2008 CGI Clone Wars show kind of overwrote the Tarkovsky show actually. And along with it, the CGI Clone Wars show also ended up contradicting and decanonizing half of the Clone Wars novels and games from the first multimedia project overall, which again sucks. It made so many cool things from the first project no longer canon for a while. But now, my understanding is that Disney considers the stories from the first Clone Wars multimedia project to be the Legends canon, and the second project to be their D-Canon, which, I mean, I love that. All of the A Clone Wars novel books are back on the menu because now I can just say anything from the 2008 show that contradicts the prior multimedia project is just the D-Canon, and with the other material is the Legends canon. It's kind of great, actually. I'll take Savage Grievous any day, along with the Mace Windu crushing his body explanation for the cough. Also, like I said, the novels from this project like Shatterpoint and Jedi Trial are fantastic, so knowing that these take place in my preferred canon universe makes it even better. Okay, so let's tie all of this up as we look towards what lies ahead. Disney's canon is still a living, breathing universe, and it's moving forward. New movies and shows are in active production along with new games, novels, and comic books. They fumbled hard in a lot of ways on a lot of things, but I still do love Star Wars. I love the universe, and I love the original 6 films. I don't get off on hating the new Star Wars canon. I actually sort of hate disliking it. I want to like it. I want Disney to do better. I want them to win me back. I've even seen articles and rumors about how they're desperately trying to course correct and win back the fan base without losing their newly acquired fans, and to be honest, I'm good with that. I'm not going to try and speak for all expanded universe fans or anything here, just for myself. I know plenty are scorched earth on Disney right now and everything it does, which, fair, you know, good for you, get after it. I don't blame you at all for that. I want to like Star Wars though, and I want to enjoy their new canon. They're gonna have to start greenlighting projects that resonate with all of the reasons we loved the EU in the first place. I don't really think Disney needs to pull any kind of massive 180, and contrary to some of my peers, I don't think they need to undo their sequels or anything so extreme. They've backed themselves into a corner by attracting and winning over a brand new audience now at the expense of more than half of the old audience, but the truth is, and I can't believe I'm saying this, they can actually have their cake and eat it too here. Keep making material for your current base, Ahsoka, Mandalorian, and Grogu, you know, the more whimsical, Disney-coded entries. But you've got to give the old fans a place to go if you want to fully capitalize on the financial branding potential of your IP. We need a Force Unleashed-like series or movie. We need an angsty, misunderstood Galen Merrick-like character, or a stand-in Jason Solo or something. Jason as in his attitude, characteristics, and story arcs, not just a child character of Han and Leia. It could be anyone, but someone for people like me to connect to. Give us an Old Republic series written by someone who could give us something sick. Go get Gareth Evans for that. He's literally one of the most slept-on writer-directors out there right now. Seriously, what are we doing here? Go give that guy a real budget. Greenlight a Dark Forces series and canonize Kyle Katarn, just altering what you need to alter to make him fit in your new timeline, but keep his iconic look and characteristics. Make us all happy. I mean, why not? Imagine a crossover between Ahsoka and Kyle Katarn. Disney, I'm giving you the keys to the kingdom here. I don't get it. I don't understand why you insist on being this way. You will make less money if you have the fan bases fighting to dictate the universe's direction all the time, because when you start down a path one of the bases doesn't like, they'll refuse to watch it on principle, and they'll attack both it and each other viciously in a desperate attempt to make their voices heard in hopes of getting something made for them in the future. I know this because I felt myself going down that path a few years ago, but it literally doesn't have to be like this. I actually don't want to see The Acolyte taken away from the people who liked it. I even understand the appeal of it, although I still think that show is very embarrassing. It did have its fans. The power of many. Apparently, but just cut the budget down to what you spent on Kenobi, which was less than half of its original budget, and make another one. Why can't we get two $90 million shows for each base instead of one $200 million show that half of the fan base won't watch? So make your skeleton crew then, I heard people liked that, but also make something cool for people like me too. A Shadows of the Empire Disney Plus special maybe. There's literally no reason why that couldn't be outright canonized with a super cool Dash Rendar casting. My vote is Scott Eastwood for that personally, although I question if he'd even agree to do it. The Solo movie tie-in book, Solo, A Star Wars Story, Tales from Vandor, actually did canonize Dash to the D-Canon universe as a character indirectly, so it's not like he's not already canon in your universe, and there's literally millions of dollars worth of potential in a Shadows of the Empire series. My point is that the universe is big enough, and I refuse to believe that Disney's budget isn't as well. They're Disney. They have all of the money. All of it. It's all there. They have it. You know, I think I'll always be a Star Wars fan. There's so much expanded universe content that I've been close to for my whole life, and even more that I'm still excited about exploring for the first time. But I'd like to think there will be an opportunity for me in the future to say that I'm at least a partial current Star Wars fan, where I'm excited for Season 2 of Dark Forces, or Season 1 of some original new thing that I don't know about that I think is cool on Disney+, right alongside all the fans that are excited about Season 6 of Baby Yoda Sells Again. Or just something that I think is cool, at least. I don't know. Disney needs to start recognizing the existence of a diversity in taste. Look at the most popular Star Wars products from before they purchased the brand, and greenlight projects in that vein to win back the fans they've lost over the last decade. There's more stories in Star Wars than any other fictional universe I can think of. It's saturated, arguably oversaturated. And now there's two different canons to reckon with for fans of the IP. For new fans of Legends, I've read people's journeys on discovering the old stuff and loving it, and for old fans just now giving some of Disney's canon a real chance, well, most of us are still not satisfied, but Season 1 of Mandalorian did pretty well.
I want more.
There's room. Disney just has to get over whatever the hell it is they've been doing all of this time and allow some of the more passionate fans who have loved Star Wars for decades to get involved and start making things that resonate with fans from the EU. And they stand to quadruple their overall profit on the IP, at least I believe. Bring balance to the Force. Unite the fans, not by demanding that everyone like the same thing and insulting them when they don't, but by opening the doors to more people's tastes and showing that this universe is rich enough to inspire with stories of all kinds. Or, just keep doing whatever the hell culture war garbage you've been doing and making millions of dollars anyway, I suppose. I don't know, I'm not a bigwig producer, I'm just some guy who likes lightsabers and makes YouTube videos, what do I know? Maybe Star Wars really is dead. Buy your Grogu plushies, stickers, and dolls, everyone. Tune in for Ahsoka Wins Again Season 3. Buy that sweet merchandise, and long live the blood-drained corpse of Star Wars. Whatever.